Thank you all for joining today's webinar. I'm Nirmala Balakrishnan, part of the research team at NASSCOM. NASSCOM, in partnership with KPMG, recently published an update to its 2019 report on software testing titled Software Testing Trends Shaping the Industry. This report covers the various trends that have changed during the after COVID. What are the based on different parameters. So in today's webinar, we will share a short synopsis of this report, followed by a discussion with our esteemed panel of industry experts. If you have any queries during the panel discussion, you can share the same in the question panel of the console. And we'll address the relevant questions after the panel discussion. Thank you once again for joining. I now request Mr. Prerit Binjrajka, Director Digital Engineering and Quality KPMG, to begin the session by sharing briefly the key takeaways from our report. Over to you, Prerit.
Hi, everyone. Good afternoon. Thank you, Nirmala. Hope I'm loud and clear. So a very good afternoon to all of you. What we are going to do for the next 1 hour is very quick brief about the report that we have published. We'll see some quick insights around the software testing trends, how has been our industry shaping, and some of the way forward, some of the challenges that we've been facing. Post that, I'll try and give the panel a tough time getting some answers for you all, where you're free to open in and you're free to put in your questions in the Q&A pod, and I would be moderating the panel, and we would also take the question answers along. All right, so beginning with some trends, what we did is in 2019 we did a report on the changes, on how there has been a shift from testing to digital quality assurance. And now we felt that this is the time where we should talk about the trends, because the pandemic has changed a lot of things. So talking about the overall industry overview, is there a growth? Absolutely yes. Is it promising for us? Does the industry, does our career look all promising? Yes, it absolutely does. What has been happening and where the test organizations are focusing are 5 primary pillars. Flexibility. I think flexibility in each term, whether it be we're talking about the cloud, we're talking about the new technologies, whether we're talking about work from home to work from office dilemma, everywhere flexibility is needed. Now, we call it flexibility, we call it introspect and adapt, we call it agile, whatever we want to name it. Then comes the market data and hyper-connected business. Everybody wants everything quick, right? And we need to make sure that it's all tested well, it's not broken anywhere. So everybody is adopting more and more of AI/ML. We need to be hyper-connected all the time. Predictability of consumer behavior. I think that's a very, very important thing. I was reading a report a few days back, and that report said that the average uninstallation time of an app nowadays with Gen Z, with millennials, whatever you want to call them, is 6 seconds. Believe me, it is 6 seconds. All right. So consumer behavior predictability is something which is very important. So when you test any application, keep it in mind that you are testing it on behalf of your users. Speed and time to market. Yes. Daily sale, daily tariff changing, all values, all releases dynamic. You would have seen enough of this in your projects. Speed and time to market. Then with the pandemic hitting us, the end-to-end security becomes of paramount importance. That we're not only connected with our office network, but office network coupled with our all home networks, or wherever we are working from those networks. So end-to-end security becomes very important. Very quickly touching on the sectoral view, I think the report brings it out very clearly that BFSI still remains the top spender. TMT, technology, media, and telecommunication, they are coming up big time and they are getting into spend. And these are absolutely equal proportional to the testing spend, because if the IT spend is higher, obviously the project spend is higher and the testing spend is higher. I think retail and healthcare are coming up, and especially from an India perspective, the government sector is coming up big time, and they are spending more and more. Tools, I think we'll talk about it briefly in the panel as well. And what we've seen is that there is a good mix of open source and licensed tools. Open source, however, is slightly now gaining advantage, gaining prominence. But we'll have probably one of our panelists speak more about it very quickly towards the end. Now, challenges. I think this is something which is becoming, which you all would know, because we are all the ones who are shifting from one company to another company right now at a great pace, probably. So for the industry as such, the new hiring, retention, and how to motivate and keep their employees within, I think that is becoming the biggest challenge. So we had a closed door conversation, and we spoke to some of the industry leaders to get in insights into this report. And hands down, everybody's biggest challenge was hiring, retention, motivation of employees. Another thing I think which came out very clearly as a challenge was, what should be the return to office strategy, if there should be any. There is always a dilemma that some people do want to return to office, some people say no, I'm fine working from home. So where do organizations strike that right balance? How do they strike that right balance? Probably we'll talk a bit more about it in the panel as well. And I think that's another strategy that any firm right now is looking to strike the right balance for. Way forward, what should be testing as an industry or an organization, or a testing function within an organization should be doing? I think important factor is the testing strategy should become a part of the digital strategy. It should not, and it cannot be seen as alienated anymore. It has to be an integrated DevOps, agile, integrated full digital quality assurance ecosystem. India is poised to growth, but from our side as test practitioners, I think a very important point is to be upskilled all the time. Right, we cannot be left behind. The technology is gone are the days when the technology used to change in 10 years. I think we'll again touch upon this very quickly in the panel discussion as well. But I think the technology is ever evolving, very fast paced, and so we need to, from a testing industry point of view, we also need to catch up fast, catch up quick, reskill or upskill ourselves, and look at how quickly we can get ahead of that curve. All right, so with that, I think for more details, for reading through the report, it's a fantastic point of view report. You can go through either the KPMG site, or you can visit the NASSCOM page. It's a freely downloadable report. We can get into, you can get into and look into the emerging trends about the people, about what we should do, what we should not do, the process, stakeholders. So it's a good in-depth report. All right. So with that, I will not take much of your time, and I'll probably get to the panel. Nirmala, over to you.
Thank you, Prerit, for the quick synopsis. So coming up next is a panel discussion. Again, Prerit, request you to introduce our panelists and start moderating the discussion. Over to you, Prerit.
Sure, Nirmala. Thank you. So I would request all the panelists probably to come over video, and we have, all right. So I can see Madhu. Hi, Madhu. Good afternoon. I hope you are ready for some, I don't know if I should call it, but I would like to call it a fireside chat where all the participants can benefit from. Madhu is the Vice President of Delivery from Quinnox. She holds more than 16 years of experience and is also responsible for the customer success. Good afternoon, Madhu, and welcome to the panel.
Thank you, Prerit. Good afternoon to everybody.
Next, we have Prasanth Shanthakumaran. I don't know where will I touch. He has around 25 years of experience. With him, worked with from probably Apollo Tires to Ramco, Cognizant, Satyam, and now over 12 years in KPMG. He's a partner with the digital engineering and quality stream of KPMG. Prasanth, a very good afternoon and welcome to the panel.
Yeah, thanks, Prerit. Good evening to everyone. in the discussion. Thank you very much.
Next, we have Samrat on the panel. Samrat Sarkar. Samrat, very good afternoon to you. Welcome to the panel. Samrat is the head of Global Test Factory from Allianz Technologies. Samrat again has around 20 years of experience. He has worked with the likes of Cognizant and others, and now is with Allianz in the capacity of the Global Test Factory. Welcome, Samrat, to the panel.
Thank you, Prerit. Good afternoon to you and all the colleagues who are there on the panel, as well as the members who joined us. Thank you.
All right. Last but not the least, Lawrence, very good afternoon to you. Or should I say good morning, because I am sure you're sitting in some other geography. So everyone, Lawrence is the head of product for Worksoft. Lawrence, easily 25 years of experience. You've worked with Accenture, HP, and now with Worksoft for past few years as in the capacity of head of product. Welcome, Lawrence, to the panel.
Thank you very much. It's great to be here, and looking forward to the discussion today. Sure.
All right. So I'll directly now jump into some questions, and if it gets tough, it's probably you will have to bear with me and answer those questions. All right. Keep your questions coming in the Q&A chat. Prasanth, probably I'll start with you. I did talk briefly about the report synopsis and how are the overall market growth in testing, but how do you see it?
I think, Prerit, you are not audible in the last phase. I presume I'm audible right now. Just wanted to check. I'm just asking one of the fellow panelists, am I audible? You
Yes,
were,
yes,
yeah, okay.
Yeah.
So, Prerit, the question I thought was on the growth side of testing. I could pick up the initial part, but just to cover that, actually, pre-COVID time, I think the industry was growing pretty well, and then we always had a positive growth globally and from an India side. India predominantly from an investment in the GCC and many IT companies going global. So that was happening, but after the pandemic, nobody was sure what is going to happen actually, because we were all struggling what will happen to our job. Would it be there? Would it survive as an industry and all that actually? But then it was pretty surprising to see that of all the industry, IT did the best in the pandemic. And you look at the results of most of the IT companies, they have grown by 20, 25, 30, but even on a higher base actually. So you could see that growth significantly coming up in the pandemic time. And what is happening is essentially testing follows what investments happen in the digital and the tech side, be it cloud or be it any enterprise system. So what has happened is companies have realized that the only way to survive in this digital world is to automate significantly every process. And that has resulted in a lot of investment going into IT. That is pretty much. So I would say that the growth this last year, I saw the NASSCOM report, we were growing at around 15%. That's one of the highest in a decade growth on a very high base, 227 billion as the one and 15% on top. And the prediction is that the next 3-4 years, you're going to see similar kind of growth and India benefiting the most. So India would grow at 15-16% on an annualized basis, at least for 2 to 3 years. Okay. Only thing I would say is that there is a bit of talk of recession around the corner in some geography, but IMF has stated that you won't have the recession in all countries. Maybe some countries will struggle. So you'll have to watch out for this recessionary trend. But if we were to go like what is happening right now, I would say it's a tremendous time for technology. And when I say technology, testing is part of it. So that it's a very rosy time for all of us in the industry at this point of time. So just a summary of what is going to happen.
Sure, Prasanth. Thank you. Thank you. I think you've made us all happier than we were by these positive comments. And Lawrence, I'll come over to you now. What do you think is the biggest change that the pandemic has brought in on the software testing industry? Is there any transformation that you see in the overall testing industry?
Yeah, so I think certainly when we think about the pandemic, automation has come into its own. With customers today expecting more, whether it's an internal customer base wanting to work from home, organizations having to pivot very quickly to be able to support all of that, they're also faced with the competition, and the competition is relentless in the market today. And it isn't necessarily from from their traditional competition. It's very much from some of these category disruptors. So what that's driven is a real drive in the market for hiring and retaining top talent. And this is a real difficulty for companies today. And that's forcing companies to automate as much as possible. Recently, the CFO of Levi Strauss basically said that everything that can be automated should be automated. And from a testing community, this is a key baseline. From an automation vendor standpoint, we're seeing a convergence of continuous test automation together with things like process mining, task mining, DevOps, and RPA into a single intelligent automation type of platform, which covers the full life cycle. Why? It's real simple, because bringing it all together means that you get shareable, reusable assets, you can minimize errors and rework with seamless integration that reduces cost and delivers faster time to value. And that enables organizations to move at pace. In addition, in the tech sector, there's always M&A. There's been an acceleration in these spaces to bring the solutions together so that organizations can assemble these pieces without actually having to go through integrations. So bringing together continuous testing, process understanding, and RPA, customers materially benefit from the improved testing efficiency, and they're demanding more measurable outcomes. So it becomes critical to track and prove the return when it comes to the investment in these areas.
Sure. Power-packed answer, Lawrence, I think. Thank you for that. So Samrat, I'll come over next to you. Samrat, Lawrence spoke about some process mining and some other thing. What I would like you to elaborate a bit is, how are the careers in testing changing? Do you see the careers in testing changing with Agile and DevOps, everything getting integrated? Gone are the days when we used to see testing as a standalone function, that okay, this is a tester. Do you see a shift in the career in testing?
Thank you, Prerit, for the question. And I think it's an absolutely apt question with the way things are changing in the testing world. And I start responding to your question with a short word, which I have coined, and I use it a lot in my engagements. We talk about continuous testing, development, deployment, So there is something called as a CSD, continuous skills development. So in today's world, where customer experience is key in sustaining business and driving growth, and with the increased penetration of Agile, Dev, Test, SecOps, Cloud, I definitely see a massive shift in the testing career path. Upskilling, knowledge management, and therefore the need of ours becomes the so-called CSD, the continuous skill development. Now with changing customer preferences, their consumption pattern, we need to really reimagine the way we have seen QA and QA careers conventionally. The roles and the work profiles also need to be transformed, or they are on the phase of transformation to keep up the pace in terms of today's requirement. And we really don't want to confine it to the roles of functional tester, performance tester, automation tester, but in turn, we call it FSQS, the full stack quality specialist, and the prime focus being delivering brilliant customer experience. That's what even you touched upon your report earlier. Now with these specialists on board, obviously there is also a need for a comprehensive career and competency framework within the organization to keep the boost of continuous skill development and also allow the flexibility of these roles being within the organization. In-house of the testing fraternity to back to you.
I think Samrat, you've given some food for thought to Nirmala from NASSCOM point of view as well, to think around how we can help the industry develop some of these roles and a framework around it probably. Cool. Madhu, thank you for patiently waiting for your turn to the question. I would turn to you for a question now. We've been hearing AI, ML, so what do you think is exactly new age testing when we call it, no? And I'll couple it with another question, that do you think that as testing industry, we are lagging somewhere in the adoption of these new age technologies?
Well, to start with, I would say that AI or ML testing is no more the future of testing, but it's actually the current testing trend. We've gradually moved from using AI in test execution to infusing it into the entire QA process. The journey has started. We need to start applying AI throughout the software test cycle. The use of AI can dramatically increase the efficacy rate of test automation tools, thereby reducing the need for human intervention to identify critical issues with the old traditional ways of testing. And a simple cheat sheet, if I may call it so, to find out where AI can be most beneficial for the beginners is test planning and prioritization, test creation and maintenance, test data generation, visual testing, and test and defect analysis. The trends that will really help us drive AI acceptance in the next 2 to 3 years would include cloud and SaaS adoption, container native architectures and microservices, business pressure to deliver fault-free business critical applications, the challenge of correlating testing and quality with value realization, right? And that's so key to successful business. The need to balance quality as well as delivery velocity in this super agile world, heightened regulatory, safety, security, and privacy needs, and new remote and hybrid work configurations. So one changing trend that is being observed is to increase the speed and minimize risk. Organizations are now focusing more on buy versus build. This is a challenge that we often come across with our customers, and we help them take this decision through our consulting services. With a market that is so flooded with AI augmented testing tools, selecting and implementing these tools can be extremely tedious. Right. And as software leaders who are supportive of this changing new trend, we need to take the following steps to make the process fast as well as accessible. One, of course, we must identify our organization's specific testing needs by creating a prioritized list of required capabilities to ensure that the optimal testing process is being utilized. Then we must support our teams by budgeting for these tools to enable them to deal with the increased pace and complexity along with driving quality, right? And one more thing that I would like to emphasize upon is to deliver better user experiences by identifying usability issues with AI augmented testing tools. And, as the acceptance of AI in testing is increasing, there is certainly a flip side. There will be concerns raised regarding responsible and ethical AI utilization. And it is pertinent to us as leaders that we address these issues early on in building, developing, infusing AI in our software test lifecycle. And, to summarize, I would say that more and more non-tech organizations are showing a huge interest in AI augmented testing. I think the testing industry should look forward to some exciting times ahead.
All right, that was a great business insight. And Madhu, just a point that I feel that there is no organization which is a non-tech organization anymore. If you are an organization, you have to have tech, otherwise you're not there. So it's whether it any organization, you have to have tech. You cannot call yourself a non-tech organization anymore. All right, Samrat, coming back to you. See, we read through and we hear things about hyper automation, or automation to the tunes of 65%, 70%. We have achieved 80% of automation. Do you think it is true? such sort of or such degree of automation? And do you think that it delivers the real ROI to the clients?
The most talked about question, Prerit, I'll say, in today's era. But I have a twofold response to this. I would put across. So, firstly, in my opinion, the era of computing automation value or value of automation through conventional ROI, break-even point, those are all bygones. Okay, we have already transcended to an age where several new connotations of automation have emerged, and the primary aspect being superlative customer experience. That's the most critical point of view from an ROI perspective, if I really have to talk about. Now, coming to the question whether a 65-70% automation is really achievable, I would say yes, it is. There are caselets within the engagements that we handle. We have reached 85+% of regression automation.
Okay.
But what I would like to take the response further would be, and this is my viewpoint, we have successfully implemented this across various product innovations, where ROI should not only be measured in terms of, how many rounds of tests do we do. I would go to an extent of how many early and multiple rounds of tests do we do. Yes, that is for sure. But at the same time, are we even doing a reusability aspect to the test automation piece? And this is all that I'm talking about more from applications testing perspective, right? Which we primarily focus on from the testing industry per se. Now, when I say reusability, we have heard about framework being reused. We have heard about classes being reused. But can we really go to an extent of reusing the test automation scripts as is, or with some minor tweaks? And that's being done, or that is really being put into practice. With that being said, we have actually seen a 40% reusability in our case studies that we have put across. And this actually brought down our cycle time by 60 to 70% in all. So the definition of ROI really needs to be revisited in how we look about things. On another note, and like I said, we should not restrict ourselves only to applications testing to actually realize the ROI, but can we look at across the entire dimension of the IT ecosystem? To name a few, it could be infrastructure testing, user acceptance or user experience testing, going to an extent of automated performance tests and monitoring. These could be some of the really biggest bets that we can look up to. And this in turn would help us delivering a predictable IT service as a whole and eventually realize the most critical ROI, according to me, which I coin it as zero impact outages. So that's in a nutshell, I would say, how the measurement of ROI is also changing with this changing testing landscape.
Right, Samrat, I think fantastic views, and it's good to hear that yes, automation is going to those levels, and yes, how we need to probably rethink around how we define the whole ROI mechanism, and it's not just for a particular but a holistic view rather. Madhu, I'll come back to you. I think earlier when we were talking about the report also talks it about in detail, and when I was presenting the report snippet, talent acquisition, I think, and retention is hands down the biggest industry problem, right? So what do you think? What are some immediate training needs that we have? And if you can also throw some light on, is there a skill which you think is the most important skill for a tester to have in the current times to keep him relevant? So probably these two, just some light on these two questions around training needs and around the most important skill to have.
Sure, thank you. So, see, my fellow panelist Samrat has already set the foundation for the need for transformation, upskilling, retooling ourselves, right? In today's fast-paced world, manual quality assurance testing is definitely inadequate for the increasing complex software, primarily because it does not scale and cannot support a rapid pace of frequent incremental change. If I have to categorize these skills for success, then I would say there are three different categories. One is core skills, valuable skills, and specialized or emerging skills. Core skills, of course, These skills are widely adopted, heavily used, have proved to provide significant benefits over all these years, right? So it is important to prioritize these core skills over others, because these are fundamentally valuable in staying relevant even as the software development continues to evolve and QA responsibilities increase. The skills in this category are testing strategy, functional testing, software development basics, automated testing, and a collaborative mindset. To be an effective contributor, you should certainly have a solid grasp of the fundamentals of software development. Three elements that really stand out in this are programming, APIs, and databases. I would certainly urge every QA engineer to learn at least one programming language. Also, along with that, understand and learn how to use APIs and databases, right? Because they are the foundation for software development. Along with acquiring these skills, one thing that has really, emerging, or I would say, coming across, is having a collaborative mindset. It is really imperative to understand your key players of the ecosystem, like the customers, the product owners, the developers, infrastructure and operations, to name a few, and also demonstrate a team-oriented mindset and a transparent way of working. Coming to valuable skills, these represent test types and knowledge that will enable QA engineers to expand testing applications beyond functional requirements and characteristics. The skills, if you may ask me, in this category, I would say it would be performance testing, non-functional testing, and advanced programming. I definitely touched upon, the importance of picking up one programming language, and advanced programming would include an understanding of the design patterns, coding practices. These are valuable and needed to cover the quality concerns, right, that envelop the entire user experience and real world conditions. Coming to the final thing, which is the specialized or emerging skills. These are relatively new in growth, in interest, and in adoption. Knowledge of these skills will certainly allow the QA engineers to approach unique and growing opportunities in the software development world. And the skills in this category are cloud knowledge, absolutely essential, chaos, reliability, re-engineering, and accessibility testing. QA engineers who are aspiring to get specialization will have to certainly understand 3 layers of cloud computing, which includes infrastructure, platform, software. Along with these, it would be nice if you could familiarize yourself with public, private, hybrid, and multi-cloud. I would summarize this by stating that a mindset to learn and collaborate within the ecosystem are 2 essential life skills that will go a long way for testing professionals.
Sure, Madhu. Thank you. I think you've given us the way forward to learn, at least, that what all do we need to learn. And I think the thoughts around the panel are all resonating in terms of that we are moving towards a full stack tester kind of. It's not only a full stack developer anymore, and we need to have all round skills. All right, Lawrence, you seem to be very comfortable in your chair or your room, so I'll probably come to you, and Prasanth, I'll come to you next after Lawrence. Lawrence, around the whole tools landscape, how do you see it changing? How do you see it evolving, the whole tools landscape? We did speak about it briefly around the open source versus the commercial tools taking a mix, but what is your view around the whole tools landscape?
So I think that just really adding to the comments made by Samrat and Madhu, one trend that continues to persist is automation technology that doesn't require specialized programming skills and supports the needs of both the technical and the non-technical user. I know you mentioned that every organization is about tech, but there are non-technical users who want to get involved. They own the processes. Those processes, to be seamless through to execution, need to be there. So when we think about these technical strengths that create efficiencies and make test building much faster, they improve the collaboration between technical teams and business stakeholders, which is critical. Why? Because ultimately we're testing business critical applications and underlying infrastructure. So some of the key, I guess, changes that we see are obviously driven towards codeless and AI-driven capabilities. A key underlying component also is shareable automation, content creation that enables organizations to create scale at speed. Unattended testing, lights out testing at an enterprise scale is becoming even more critical, and that complete integration to the CI/CD pipeline is really, really important. One of the most compelling areas that is showing today, driven by sort of codeless and AI-driven capabilities, is a model-based self-healing framework that mitigates brittle automation. One of the reasons that that coming together in a common platform is becoming more and more important is because organizations need to move at pace. They want to be able to take those shareable contents and be able to flow those from process through test automation and ultimately into production automation. If they can reuse that or use those shareable components, then they're more likely to get a less brittle experience. And having a self-healing framework will drive that. So we kind of see the market in three segments: the convergence of continuous testing, process understanding, and RPA. Customers wanting to see that ROI, and the test organization play a key role here because they can really demonstrate the value they bring to their organizations and their customers. And it comes down to that customer experience. And the market, quite frankly, is still quite immature in the adoption of some of these technologies, but they will become mainstream over the coming years. And I think to that last point about maturity, recently Gartner suggested that organizations in terms of process maturity are probably on a stage 2 out of a 5-stage process. So when you think about that, it positions the test organization to be maturing, adding value, upskilling, and in addition to that, enables those people in that organization to do higher value work through the automation piece. So that full approach helps organizations just engage, adopt newer technologies, but also drive their transformations at pace to give a faster and more valuable return to their business and to their customer base.
Sure. I think Lawrence, some really valuable insights there. Thank you for that. Prasanth, coming over to you. You've been patiently waiting for your turn. Thank you. That I know I opened with you. Now, can you give us on the whole, is there any significant opportunity that you see emerging, demand, enterprise side, or what is the overall domain side story of the testing services?
Yeah, I think just to cover that, Prerit, BFSI still would be the predominant sector that invests. Actually, if you look at of the top line, 11%, the budget for IT for a BFSI is typically about 10 to 11%. That tends to be high, and that will keep increasing because today you see of banks without any even office space itself. Now people hardly go to the bank in the first place, but in the next generation bank, you wouldn't even have an office for them. They would be completely automated. So I think BFSI as a sector would be where you would see significant investment, and even in the testing space of it. The second is actually government as a sector. Yeah, your contracts and payment and all that have to be taken care, but as government as a sector is also significantly investing because they've realized that rest of the sector, and to knit together all of them, they need that. And that part is also beginning. I mean, even during the pandemic, the only way to spur up the economy also was from the government to do investment, and that's where they were doing it. And there is a significant investment going in. But you are also finding, which is not a sector story, but across sector, what two things are happening. One is everybody is e-commerce enabled right now. So, for example, people are selling through Amazon or Walmart or any of them. But now they are creating their own channels for sales by themselves. So what is happening? The e-commerce model is coming up in every sector, either B2B, B2C, or that area. The second part of it is the fintech integration. Because today you want a automatic, you want to scan, you go to a pre-pandemic level, we didn't visualize this, but after that some local fruit wala came and I could do the payment through a Google Pay or one of these devices. So what's happening is the second integration is about the fintech integration with the e-commerce. So across industry, that part will play a big role. So I would say BFSI, then the government, and secondly, this integration of e-commerce, fintech across all sectors. But I would also put one specific to India, which is the GCC segment. So, you know, every global organization has invested in India. We have about 1,200 GCCs operating right now, and it's only increasing. Even at this point of time, there are companies investing. So from an India play and for the testing sector, I would say GCC is also a big one because they are doing significant investment. So these are broadly the four sectors, but obviously the investment, like I said in the initial part, all companies are investing in digital, and it's only going to be increasing as things progress. So but I just picked up two, three sectors which have more investment can be given actually. Yeah.
Sure, Prashant. Thank you. So I think for the next question, I'll just go around the table or the screen rather, and we will have. What I wanted to understand is that the traditional problem of testing has been, how do we convince the leadership, whether it is our own organization leadership or it is the client, that testing adds value, right? What is the value that testing adds? And not traditionally in terms of calculating an ROI and showing it, but whole testing as a concept and as a value. You know, everybody says quality comes with a cost, but nobody wants to pay the cost for the quality, right? It has been a traditional problem that I have suffered. So I just wanted to go around the screen and check that how do we make the business leaders understand what is the value that testing adds? In no particular order, anybody who wants to start, please.
Yeah, maybe I can just give my perspective, just continue from the earlier one. So I think the cost of failure is a significant thing for any company. So I was in UK for many years, and what used to happen was every year the Heathrow's software system used to go down once, and that used to create a biggest flight, at least about 200 to 300 flights which are stuck there, people stuck. So I was always calculating what is the cost of quality of that particular instance. So I think some businesses have realized that the cost is significantly high. You look at an e-commerce site or even somebody running an airport or a bank or whatever, a system goes down for some time, is a significant cost for them. So I think that is the biggest driver even now today from a testing viewpoint, not to have this failure. Post-pandemic, the second thing is Elon Musk started SpaceX, but think of somebody traveling without the system getting tested completely. And that is the level of testing. It's a significantly different level of testing, I would say. So I would say the cost of quality of business, the impact of any of this not being tested is the one that drives the behavior, and it will continue to drive this behavior because nobody wants to take the risk, especially for mission critical ones. So that's my view on the testing side. It's never going to go away because of this factor.
I think I think the testing community, brings real value here, right? I think there's a couple of areas. One of them is around visibility. The fact that the testing community is testing, those core and critical business processes, it gives confidence back to the business that, that if they want to make change or drive change at pace, that the testing community actually has the current framework covered and the ability to maneuver into the new process area or the new environment or 2D state. So visibility is one part of it. The testing community can also identify where there's a lot of commonality, right? We see today, when we look at processes that are being tested, there are so many different variants that are being tested that's one of the reasons that organizations become paralyzed and can't change quickly, because they don't know the hand they were dealt. That testing community can help really bring visibility to that and help organizations move at pace.
All right, my point. Samrat, would you like to?
Yeah, so I agree with the panels and basically add a couple of points over here. So traditionally we used to look at testing, through the prism of defects and thus the cost added to fix the defect at a later point of time. It holds good even today. But I would say there is an additional need to look at, how things are being evaluated at the end point. Typically the customer experience, the customer journey, the customer satisfaction. Now, having said that, can we really start early? And when I say early, very early, stretch to the extreme right, but at the same time, ensure that things are kept lean. Okay. In one of the responses that I said, we are only looking towards applications testing, but can we really look at the entire IT ecosystem? Okay, that typically helps in getting or catching the defects really early and really fixing them at a way ahead of time. And besides this, obviously, in today's world, test automation or testing faster really plays a very key role in this overall delivery life cycle, and that too within a stipulated cost. So it is equally important for us to evaluate whatever solutions that we are delivering as a part of testing that bring in necessary delight in terms of customer journey and customer experience. So I would typically look at the extreme right of the life cycle.
Sure, very pertinent point, Samrat. Madhu, you would like to add?
Sure, thank you. So yes, completely in alignment with my panelists. One thing that I would like to add is to make business leaders understand the value of testing. I think it is important for us also to gain an understanding of the definition of their success criteria, right? Samrat did touch upon, a couple of things, but what I would like to say is that the business leaders today are primarily measuring revenue growth, profit margins, customer satisfaction, and ROI. If we are able to bring synergies between the testing KPIs and the business KPIs, I think we'll be able to build a stronger case. Reduction in test cycle time, reduction in time to market, a higher velocity. If we are able to measure all of this and show improvements, then I'm certainly confident that the business leaders definitely would understand the value of testing.
Sure, Madhu. I think thanks everyone for putting your thoughts in there. I think I'll, with probably 12-13 minutes left, I'll also try and pick in some questions from the participants now so that we get there. So I think this is a question that I'm going to pick now that has come from Rohit. And I see still a lot of people deliberating around this. So the question he has asked is that there is a trend in the industry where functional testing is looked down as compared to automation testing, right? How can we change this perspective or mindset in the industry that, functional testing is not good, or you are a manual tester, So any views around how can
Prerit, probably I'll take it up and then the other panels can add. And this is something which I have been preaching within my teams as well. So for me, everything is a functional testing. Yeah. So whether you do it manually or whether you do it automatically is your prerogative. So if you see, functional testing is not losing its essence whatsoever, but the way of testing certain things or the approach to test certain things are changing. And that's where, automation is picking in big time. And I'll probably leave it to the other fellow panels to add their responses.
Anyone wants to weigh in? All right.
No, maybe I can just give a quick. So I think even now we talked about automation and the percentage of automation that companies have achieved. While people say 50%, there is a lot of cost of maintaining the scripts, and so the tool landscape also changes continuously. Even today, I would say manual testing is one predominantly done for most of it. Whatever you talk of, the scriptless automation, low code, no code type of automation, but significant, at least about 70 to 80% of testing is manual. And that will continue because the systems still, the business flows, you can't automate everything. And in a agile way of working the code is also, and the software is also changing very quickly. Post that, maybe from a regression viewpoint, many things can happen, but in the first implementation, new versions and all that significant. So I wouldn't say manual testing never goes up, but somebody like we were talking about full stack Java developer these days who can do right from the front end to the database side. In the testing side also, people have to pick up the skill across those spectrum. They can do manual, but they should also be knowing automation based tools. And third, I also picked up what Madhu was saying, very important for them to know the programming languages as well, because otherwise they cannot connect with the development community. So the full stack spectrum of testers would be required, but manual is going to continue. It is never going to go away.
Absolutely. I think, Prasanth, I absolutely reckon with you on that, one straight answer to is manual functional testing dying is no. It is not going to go. It is going to be there. Yes, automation can add it. All right. Now, we've been speaking a lot about automation and stuff like that. And there is a question that how do we control the cost of quality? Okay, I would not like to put it as reduced, but how do we control? See, it actually appears, and this is a question from Ashish, that CI/CD, DevOps, they're actually increasing the cost to delivery overall. So is there a way that we can actually control or restrict the cost of quality? I don't know if I put a tough one, but this is a question from Ashish. So I thought it's quite relevant. Ashish, I think you have put the panel on a spot. Anybody would like to give your thoughts around how we can control the cost and quality?
I think, it's a fantastic question. I think that, in isolation, from testing, it's difficult to control that without having access to, I guess, some upstream processes. So understanding the process, being able to, capture that at the right level of detail, whether it's the current state or a future state, and be able to feed that through the pipeline, reduces error, and therefore increases the quality of the outcome. So, if you can automate those pieces because you're actually automating or testing a clear process and the variance of that process, then the value that the reduction in quality brings is a much more predictable outcome when you move things to a production state. So I think there are multiple sources of that information that feed in to reduce the reduce the risk and therefore maintain the quality level.
Sure, Lawrence. I think, and I would also like to weigh in probably. What I feel is that a lot of times we do automation or we do use AI, ML or other high-end technology time just to showcase it that we are using these, right? While not evaluating objectively whether is it actually needed for the project or not. So I think that a lot to do with the cost is also to think that whether we will get now, I remember Samrat touched upon the whole ROI concept, but going by the traditional ROI concept, whether it is useful or not, if it's a one single big bang release and it does not have anything, do we need to really automate the regression part, right? So I think that's an important lever where we need to control or probably restrict the cost by seeing the right applicability of the right way. The automation can be done in a number of ways. It can be a regression suite, it can be a pre-prod sanity suite, it can be a lot of things, but do we really need it in the project is the first question to ask for.
I think many, that's a great point, Prerit. I think many organizations look at the cost. I think Madhu mentioned about tools and training is a cost, and we have to invest in that space. But what that brings is more outcomes, faster outcomes. I can do more, and that's the piece that people tend to overlook because they're actually looking at, well, it's going to cost me this to do this, and that seems extremely high. However, if I could actually do, instead of doing 10 things, I could do 50 things, then all of a sudden the value that's returned is way higher, and therefore the investment becomes just a small piece.
In fact, Prerit, I'll probably add one point. Many a times, the cost of quality is associated with certain dependencies that the testing team might have. For example, an environment not ready, the batch is not running on time, and the integration not happening properly. So if these intermediaries are brought in right at the first time itself, probably the overall cost of quality also reduces. And we can definitely relook on the definition of cost of quality, because the examples that I was sharing earlier, we have actually brought it down to 12 to 15% in an overall engagement per se from our perspective.
Sure. I think so there is another question asked by Julie, that something around the techniques, the estimation techniques, right? That still we feel that the thumb rule that used to be there, testing has to be 30% of development effort, right? So people used to believe in that, and that is how they used to be estimating. And Samrat, with the smile, I feel you've gone through this process or probably this connotation earlier. Now, some of these beliefs around effort, and do you see that changing, at least testing taking a sizable pie, or testing getting its fair share of effort estimates? Julie, your question was quite long to read, so I tried to make it concise. Probably anyone would want to take this, that what is the share of testing in overall project, and how do we make it better and better?
So probably I'll start, and maybe the other panels can add. With the onset of agile journey and agile transformation that we are going through, I would position that testing is aptly placed in the entire Scrum teams or the sprint cycles that we have.
Mm-hmm.
The thumb rule of 30% may or may not be valid at this juncture, right? Because it primarily depends on the number of stories you want to deliver probably towards the end of the sprint, or the number of stories which you really want to deliver towards the end of a release. Mm-hmm. And with the shift left that is happening, so I touched upon, can we really bring regression test in sprint? With that, you might possibly want to eliminate an entire regression sprint that you would have otherwise had in a release cycle. So, the thumb rule may or may not be valid, but then testing is really placed apt in the current context from an estimate perspective. Mm-hmm. The techniques can vary depending upon the approach of the engagements that we have to follow.
Sure. All right. I think that brings me to the last question for today's webinar. If there are close to 150 participants, and I saw the peak going around 170, and assuming that a lot of us listening to you folks are the test practitioners, is there one message that you want to give for these 150 odd people to be? Is there a success mantra, first thing, or what is the key takeaway that you want them to take with them today?
I would say get engaged with your colleagues who are upstream to your process area or to your specific area, and downstream, because you can learn what is happening from the business side, from a process angle, but you can also help downstream process areas or downstream teams to be more successful and collaborative. And I think bringing those components together is really key. And it'll help people to benefit.
Sure.
Yeah, maybe
if I go.
Yeah, Samrat, please.
Yeah, if I go next, testing today is a very collaborative team in this entire agile journey that we are going through. So I would say deliver brilliant customer experience through zero impact outages.
Mm-hmm. All right, that's a fine point, Samrat. Thank you for that. Prasanth.
Yeah, I think two things. One, this question always comes up as to would this profession exist as things progress, especially in the DevOps world? I think this has been the discussion for the last 20, 25 years. So, and I would say that this will continue. And the question around automation coming up, manual testing will also continue. That is one part of it. But I think the second more important part, which I saw around questions as well, saying that somebody is 15 years and then they cannot learn or they cannot take up. I think the ability to continuously learn for testers as relevant is an important part. So tech is one world, it is changing every day. Cloud computing as an area, you need to be completely aware of it. AI, ML, not just words, but actually, do you do work in those areas and learn? I think very, very important to spend considerable amount of time at any age to learn that. So that's the only other piece of advice I would give, other than saying that this profession is never going to go away.
Sure, Prasanth, thank you. That was really reassuring for all of us. Madhu, any quick points, please?
Yeah. So thanks. Yes, I would like to emphasize the need once again on learning and reskilling and retooling with low code, no code, AI augmented tools in the market, DevOps. The boundaries between the testing and development are slowly blurring. So it's really important for the QA engineers to have a learning mindset, pick up some of the emerging skills, learn them so that you can have more meaningful conversations with your developers and also engage in a much better fashion.
Sure, Madhu. So thank you. Thanks a lot to all of you, Lawrence, Prasanth, Samrat, Madhu. I know you've taken out time from your busy schedules. You've given us really words of wisdom today. I think everybody attending would have learned something, especially or has those key takeaway messages for which we joined. Thank you once again, all, for taking out time, for participating in the panel and for sharing your thoughts. Nirmala, back to you.
Thank you, Prerit and esteemed panel, for sharing your insights with us. Really engaging session. We've got a lot of fodder for not only future discussions, but more importantly, implementation and way forward. Just quickly summarizing, we have already shared a copy of the report in the link below, the window below. I'll also share a link of the recording of this webinar with all the attendees. This is also available on our community portal and the NASSCOM website. So do share your queries and suggestions with us at research@nasscom.in. With this, we come to the end of this webinar. Hope you found this useful and we hope to connect again with you soon. Thank you so much.